Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon, or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey.
Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
Ken Watson has been associated with the SK Pierce Mansion, located in South Gardner, Massachusetts, since 2013. When Rob and Allison Conti purchased the mansion in 2015, they hired Ken to do the majority of the interior restoration of the mansion. Over the next 4 years, Ken has meticulously restored the mansion to its former glory. In 2018, Ken was named the historical curator, and since accepting the position, has given multiple tours of the Victorian Mansion, created a museum area within the mansion, and has given lectures. With the misleading information in social media surrounding the family and the mansion, he felt compelled to give historically accurate information. After more than 2 years of research and viewing over 1,000 documents, Ken has compiled a book, which we're going to discuss today. So Ken, your book has a long title, but it covers a lot of stuff. It's called Sylvester Knowlton Pierce, Genealogy and History of the Victorian Mansion in SK Pierce Chair Factory. It was written by you. As we just mentioned, you're the historical curator, and you're the man responsible for completing the entire interior of the house. So my first question is, after restoring a mansion and being an EMT at the same time, how did you ever find time to write a book?
Well, it's been a process that has taken several years. What free time I have had, I've put into exploring the history and the genealogy. It's been a long process, but it's been very enlightening.
So Ken, this house, you see it a lot on the Travel Channel, and people may know it more for its haunted aspect, but it's got a great history to it too. And probably when on the haunting side, they don't really hear the real story about the SK Pierce family. Can you tell us what inspired you to write this book?
Well, what inspired me was just for the public to actually understand the family more thoroughly and in detail, and to humanize the Pierces, and not to look at them as a spirit that roams the home, but actually know who they were and their time that they lived, and just to really encompass all of that. Now, that's not to take away from the paranormal and what they do. I mean, this place is extremely haunted.
You mentioned, by the way, as an aside, before we started, you mentioned there was a spirit in this room with us, correct?
Yeah, and there still is.
Did you know who it was, or?
No.
No, okay. So we should all, hey, look on the side, we should say, not only are you the curator and an EMT, you and your wife Mimi, but you both have psychic abilities, and you both had a lot of experiences. I don't know if it's really opened up to you since you've worked in this house, but you've really built kind of a kinship with the spirits that come and go here. So you talked about, SK Pierce. So ghosts are history. I've heard Jeff Belanger in another interview say that. And so I wonder if you have the same thought. And it's kind of, when the ghosts are here, they probably want their history to be shared accurately, and maybe they were speaking through you. So can you tell us kind of the backstory of the family behind the house?
The book covers 9 generations from when the Pierce family came over from England, and that was in 1637. And the 5th great-grandfather was Richard Pierce. He resided in Watertown when he came over. And through the following generations, it was mainly a family that farmed until Mr. Pierce. At that point, he learned the chair factory, and everybody, pretty much knows the story of how successful he was with that, resulting in him having the financial ability to build this beautiful 21-room Victorian mansion.
This is an audio podcast, so people can't we'll share links, but they don't really know the scope of this house and how much it's transformed and how beautiful it is. They will when they get the book, obviously. They will see that. I imagine you have before and after pictures in it. Give us kind of the landscape of this place. When you walked in, how big it was, how much work you had to do to renovate it.
Yeah, when Rob and Allison, they purchased the home in 2015, I think little did they know what they were getting themselves into. This house was in very disrepair, very much so. And that's why it has taken so long to restore it, is because of the multiple problems that were happening in this house. When I first walked in the house, it's just a grand house. And I would encourage everyone to, if they have the chance to come in and take a tour with us. It's just a beautiful, beautiful home. The woodwork and the detail that went into constructing this home. It's a landmark in Gardner.
Yeah, and it was close to being, what do you call it?
I would say within, before Rob, if he hadn't purchased, probably within the next 2 or 3 years, it probably would have been condemned most likely.
Yeah, and tell us about look, in the house, a lot of houses, when I had an old house, you work on maybe the roof at the top and maybe at the bottom, the foundation. Mm-hmm. So what was the roof like when you walked into this thing?
The roof had been leaking for years. And the attic had been open to the elements where the pigeons made their residence. Probably at least 30 pigeons lived up in the attic.
Wow. Jeez. And what was the foundation like, the basement? What was that kind of?
It's a solid foundation.
Okay.
Some repairs are required, but it's a solid foundation.
And was the structure pretty solid? I mean, I know you had so the bones of the house were pretty good, except for the roof where you started. What about, just give us a scope? How many windows, how many doors, how many rooms? What do you have to deal with in this place?
Of living space, there's 6,661 square feet. There's 21 rooms, and there are 75 windows, and every window is numbered. So they have a place they're supposed to be in the house. There's 58 doors and 16 closets.
Did every window have like a screen window, a screen too for it? Or
they had shutters back then.
Shutters back then.
And they did have a screen, but it was an interior sliding screen. So it depended on whether you opened the upper sash or the lower sash, where you would place the screen.
And were they like rope pulleys that kind of opened and closed them?
The sashes, yes.
Yeah.
And the system still exists. It was all repaired. It's still weight and pulley and rope.
Oh. All right, let's go back to the history a little bit. So this has a grand history with the Pierces. Just take us quickly through once the Pierces left and kind of what this house evolved to, what it was. It was right near a train station, correct, in Gardner, so they did get some pretty prominent people that visited this place.
Actually, I'll go back a little bit further to 1851. And that's when Mr. Pierce, Sylvester Pierce, purchased a piece of property, a previous home that stood at the site. And along with another home that was on the site and a vacant lot. And he resided in that home up until he built the mansion. And then there's some controversy of what happened to the previous house that he lived in. Some have said it was moved down the street. Others have said it was destroyed. And I have not been able to, through my research, been able to discover what happened to the house, either or. Yeah. So, but what resulted was the mansion in any case. So.
Yeah. Now there was some tragedy once Pierce members moved into the house, right? Where there's some deaths that happened earlier on.
The only documented tragedy that occurred in this house that I was able to find or record is in 1963, and that was Eno Sari. He passed away from third-degree burns and smoke inhalation, falling asleep in bed with a cigarette.
Okay, so there are stories that people talk about, but you didn't find any validation for it.
There are stories, but there was absolutely to this point, there was no validation to any of them.
Now, what was the gentleman you mentioned that died in the fire again? What was his name?
Sorry.
Is there a chapter?
And I dedicated a chapter to him.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yep.
At that time, was it a boarding house or what was it?
It was a rooming house.
Rooming house, okay.
It was never a brothel. It was never a boarding house. It actually started in 1937. Edward Pierce, the third son of Sylvester, and his wife, Bessie, started a Victorian inn, much like a bed and breakfast is known today. And it continued to be that until in the 50s it transitioned into, it was called Victorian Apartments, and then transitioned into a rooming house.
So was the heyday of the house in the 1930s, or what do you think was the best era of this house in terms of being prosperous and at its best?
Well, from the day it was built.
Yeah, okay.
Until probably the early 60s, and then Edward Pierce, who still continued to own the house up until 1965, he became a little hard on money. He was running short. He was in his 80s at that point.
Yeah.
It started to lose a little bit of its grandeur there, only because he didn't have the means to make the repairs that were necessary.
Yeah, it doesn't take long for a house to lose its luster, right? Do you hear from any of the Pierces? Are there any kind of ancestors, living ancestors?
I have been in contact with yes, actually, a great-great-grandson by the name of William Munson I spoke with multiple times. So William Munson is the great-great-grandson of Sylvester Knowlton Pierce. And he is from the first son, Frank Pierce. His family was very prominent, the Munson family in Gardner. Most of them were dentists and still remain to be dentists. And he provided me with invaluable information about that side of the family, the Frank Pierce's genealogy that runs down that way. So,
has he come to this house? Has he visited?
He has been here once, yes.
Did he have any experience, or was it mostly just looking
No,
at it?
he wanted to see the house. It wasn't a paranormal type visit. He just wanted to see the house.
And you do actually, before this book came out, you were doing in Gardner lectures about the house and the history of the house.
Yeah,
stuff.
yes.
Are you still doing those, or?
Well, with the COVID-19, things are pretty much on hold, but I've given 2 lectures, actually. Well, one with a genealogy group and 2 with the Gardner Museum I've given so far.
Oh, great. Now, Gardner, I mean, if I recall correctly, you can correct me, SK Pierce was the 3rd most profitable chair maker in town, right? Are there other furniture makers in this town?
This was a chair manufacturing city.
Okay.
Furniture city.
It's known as Chair City, right?
There were multiple manufacturers around. So he was very prominent in the community. He sat on a number of boards for different banks in the area. He was instrumental in securing an additional line of the railroad from here to Wichita.
Which is Toy City, right? Isn't it? So Gardner's known. Yeah, I think it is. I think it's known as Toy City. We're going there, actually. We're going to the Whitney Murdoch house. Can you talk about some of the famous celebrities that have come to this house, whether it be politicians or pool players or whatnot?
There lies another problem I ran into during my research. It has been stated multiple times that from Barnum Bailey Circus, Mr. Bailey visited here, Calvin Coolidge, Betty Davis, Norman Rockwell, Minnesota Fats. To date, I have found absolutely no documentation that any one of those people stepped foot in this house. But what's interesting is there's a high probability that Minnesota Fats did, because he did visit Gardner. And one of the cabinet maker that did some work for us, his uncle actually, in the 1940s, racked the pool table for Minnesota Fats at Pete's Pool Hall down in Gardner Center.
All right, wow.
So, there's a possibility he may have, because it was a Victorian inn back then, a bed and breakfast. So. Yeah. But I haven't been able to find any documentation to validate any of the other people to date.
So was Gardner kind of just an up-and-coming mini metropolis in the days, in the heydays of this the chair, the chair mania and all the factories and this house being built? Was it kind of a very positive, strong economic little mini center in Massachusetts?
Yeah, they were very strong economically, and they still had the farms around too.
In renovating this house, what was probably the toughest room or the toughest area? I think I know what it might be, but what was the toughest area for you to tackle? And you're like, oh God, every day coming to work was a challenge.
The toughest area to restore in this home was the 3rd floor. And the reason for that is because of all the water damage from the roof and the pigeons living in the attic. The ceiling had to be completely taken down because within this mansion we tried to save everything, including the original plaster. But that's one area we had to pull down. And pulling it down, I pulled down with it about 4 inches of pigeon dung. And all the cracks and damage and alterations that were done over the years, trying to bring it back to what it originally was, that was a challenge.
Did you have to take down pretty much every wall and drywall, re-drywall? No?
The only rooms that were completely redone are the bathrooms.
Yeah.
Every other room in this house, except for a small little sections, is original plaster that was saved. And all the ceilings, except for the third floor, are original ceilings, original plaster.
How high are these ceilings? We're on the first floor right here.
11, this here is 10 feet, 9 inches.
Yeah. I love room houses with big, tall ceilings and a lot of space, a little claustrophobic, and you got a lot of space when you walk around this place. Give us a landscape. Just give us a quick landscape of the house when you walk in, first floor, second floor, third floor, and kind of the basement and the turret up at the top a little bit.
Approaching the house, back then they would have used the side entrance. Now, some people refer to it as a servant's entrance, but it's actually documented as a side entrance. You'd walk in, there'd be a vestibule with a stairway leading to the second floor, and off to the left you'd have the kitchen. And off the kitchen there are 2 pantries. There's a cook's pantry and a butler's pantry. And the butler's pantry is just stunningly beautiful with the china cabinets that held the dishes and so on. And from there you walk into a very elegant dining room. And interesting, in the dining room, it would have been originally a round table and still exists today as a little disc in the floor that the Mr. or Mrs. would hit with their foot and would alert a servant to come and attend to him. He did have servants back then. Only 2 are documented, but I'm sure he had more than that. And from there, you walk into the main hall with a grand staircase. Off of that is a sitting room and a parlor. Walking up the grand staircase, you come into the second floor hallway, which is interesting. From talking to multiple people, that was a dance area when they held parties.
Oh.
Which makes it appropriate because we put the Victrola up there, I guess. So. Yeah. The second floor is bedrooms, would have been family bedrooms, except for 1 servant's quarters, which was for the nannies. All the other rooms were bedrooms.
How many bedrooms roughly?
5.
Okay.
Yep, on the second floor. And then when you travel up to the third floor, it was used for mostly servants' quarters, storage, believe it or not, laundry drying in the wintertime. So the big room, if anyone's familiar with the third floor, the large room that holds the cistern,
yep.
One half of that room was lined with hooks and a clothesline, and in the wintertime they would dry the clothes up there.
And what about at the very top? Am I correct calling it a turret, or what that kind of
tower?
Bell tower.
Yep. Yeah. And that's a feature that is associated with the Second Empire Victorian style, which this house is.
Yeah.
So it had a tower that style. Sometimes it was in the middle of the house. Sometimes it was prominent in the front, like this particular house. Yeah. And on the tower it would have a very decorative crescent, which is the wrought iron that would have surrounded it. And yeah.
So this is a lot of Freemason type of touches to the architect of this house?
It appears that not so much on the inside, except for one feature which I'll mention in a second, is the outside, though, the balustrades, or as we know them as railings today, where the porches are, and some of the Juliet balconies have some features that you would wonder, maybe there's some Mason influence, because one looks like a compass and a square, and so you wonder. Although there's no documentation that I could find that SK Pierce was a Mason, all his sons were, all 3 sons.
Was the front entryway, wasn't there something there?
Well, on the doors that you enter, especially, it's kind of faded away on the front doors, but the side doors, there's some symbolism that's interesting there. Star, moon, infinity symbol, different symbols, what looks to be a Knights Templar cross, and so forth. What's interesting about what I was going to mention inside the house is all the rooms are numbered, the bedrooms, which Edward and Bessie did when they created the bed and breakfast. They're not in sequence. So my wife, Mimi, one day mapped it out and connected all the rooms, and it's in the book, it actually shows it, and when you connect all the rooms, it's an infinity symbol.
Really? That's amazing. That's
now,
awesome.
Whether that was purposely done by Edward, or just per chance it ended up that way, but it's an infinity symbol.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You've started a mini museum in the house. Can you talk about some of your interesting findings and what's in there?
Through the restoration, what I found or what wasn't going to be reincorporated in the house, I set aside. It's currently in the parlor. I set up a little room that displays all the different items. I think, to me, probably the most interesting find was in the kitchen. And it was in the wall behind the sink because we had to do some plumbing. And it was insulated with some old clothing. Most of it was destroyed by mice that lived there. It was a nest. But there were 2 pieces of clothing that I could salvage, and I put them in a shadow box. And one is a men's shirt, and it was labeled and so forth, so I was able to do research and find a history on it. And the other, and it's from the 1800s, early 1900s. And the other one is a little veil that a woman would wear from shoulder to shoulder on her Victorian dress. That was a pretty interesting find.
Yeah, it's really taking shape to be a lot of cool stuff in there, actually. And did you find a well or something recently or a while ago?
Yeah, recently, it's not recent actually, it's been almost a year. I was doing some yard work and I was pulling up some stump and I had to move an item, a huge rock, and behold was a well underneath the rock.
Wow.
And the previous owners, Edwin and Lillian, didn't even know of this.
Do you think that was from the house that was before this one that was here? Or do you
Very well could have been.
Okay, yeah, because it was. Okay.
What's interesting about the well is it's mostly filled in, but you can look down 16 feet. But there's a lead pipe that comes up from the well and goes into the basement of the house.
Okay.
So they obviously used the well water and had it pumped into the house for use.
Huh. Now, what's your favorite room in the entire house? Do you have a favorite?
Ellen's bedroom, or as most people refer to, the red room.
Okay.
And the only reason it's the red room is because of the red wallpaper.
That's on the second floor. And Ellen help me with the genealogy a little bit. She was his second wife?
Second wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And she's your personal favorite, isn't she, of all the Pierces?
Yeah, I've seen her full color apparition, actually.
Really? Is she the only one that you've seen as a full color apparition? Or
no, I've seen the little girl, Rachel, too.
Okay.
And then some obviously shadows, multiple, but these were full, like I'm looking at you.
Okay. So is there like a core group of, we're going to go into paranormal in just a minute, is there a core group of like, if this was a TV series, the Victorian Mansion, and the core cast is, Eleanor's, SK Pierce, Rachel, are there like 4 or 5 spirits that you encounter frequently and the other are more transitional, or?
Yeah, it would be the Pierces, it would be their TV show.
Okay. And
with a supporting cast.
So name the 4 or 5 Pierces that you've come in contact with.
Well, Sylvester Pierce,
yeah,
we believe is one of the spirits. Ellen Pierce, the second wife. Rachel Pierce, the little girl who is the third son, Edward's daughter. Edward Pierce. Uh-huh. And then occasionally, because there are, as people probably know in the audience here, there are 2 portals in the home. So spirits can come and go, and occasionally Stuart and Frank will make an appearance in here.
And what about, is there a boy Gordon? Was there a boy Gordon?
There's a boy who we know by the name of Gordon. We're not really sure.
Okay.
And it's theorized just through investigating. I mean, multiple psychic mediums picking up the same thing, not being with each other, that he most likely drowned. Now, whether it happened in the cistern, what some people say, or there's a pond, a stone throw from the back of the house that the Pierces owned right up to the pond at one point. Did it happen there?
Do you know? I was when I was searching for a house, I bought a house in the town next over. How's that for fate? I met you guys a couple of years ago. We did a movie and all that good stuff, and we've been together on a couple other occasions. One of the realtors was saying, "Yeah, that's a great house, man. I never went in there. I remember seeing a kid one time up in the window, and more than one person has told me that. Which?
That would be Gordon.
That would be Gordon. Okay, yeah.
And there is another child that comes and goes from this house. And his name is Peter Sinclair, and he's responded to that. If you're doing paranormal investigations, he may make an appearance, and he'll respond to his name. And he was another 9-year-old that was struck and killed in front of this house. I believe it was 1908 by a motor vehicle while he was riding his bike.
And Rachel Pierce, I think she was 2 years old, roughly. Is it documented what she died from? I know it was
gastroenteritis.
Okay, which is
pretty much it was contaminated water, most likely.
Okay, because the rumor was the Spanish flu, right, or something like that, or was that no?
No.
Okay, see how you had to write the book because already I'm wrong in like 3 or 4 things. It's a hearsay. Okay, it's going to set the record straight. We've already started talking about the paranormal, but in the book, you neither confirm nor refute, the haunted happenings here.
I don't, in the book, I don't even talk about the paranormal. That's not the place. It was more for the historical aspect of the house, the family, the factory, the truth behind.
Yeah.
And I'm not disputing, and I'm not advocating any paranormal.
Yeah. But looking at you in the eye, you've had irrefutable experiences here, you would think, right?
Oh, anything that could happen has happened to me in this house.
Yeah, so you, Mimi, your wife, we're going to talk about her as well. And can you mind talking a little about, some of your experiences, Mimi's as well, who helped you with the restoration, and Marion Luama, who's the manager of the SK Pierce, just like 2 or 3 that kind of scream out at you.
Where should I begin?
The safe, the table tipping?
Well, I mean, the one that really stands out for me is because I was here so much, and I live in Beverly, Mass, so it was quite a travel. If I was going to be here the next day, I would just stay here. And multiple times I just stay here by myself. Yeah. Nothing ever scared me in here. I haven't seen anything evil, and there is nothing evil in this house. But I was sleeping, as I normally did, in Ellen's bedroom on the bed. And I don't know what time it was, but all of a sudden the mattress bounced, as if somebody was jumping onto the mattress. Yeah. And then I felt a very solid pressure on my back. And that lasted probably at least 20 to 30 seconds. And my eyes were wide open, and although I wasn't really scared, I was like, well, this has never happened, but I was not going to roll over to see who it was either. And that one really stands out to me. Definitely.
And did you think that was Ellen, or who did you think?
I don't know who it was.
Okay. All right.
Although Mimi says it was probably Ellen trying to snuggle with me or do whatever.
Spoon with you.
I think Mimi was jealous.
Okay. And not to speak for Mimi, who's actually taken my kids for a little tour around the house while we do that. Very nice of her. Anything that she's kind of mentioned that you were with her or that she's experienced without you?
Back when Edwin and Lillian owned the house, we stayed again in Ellen's room. We were the only ones in the house. And we had a fan on. It was a summer day. It was hot. As everybody knows, it can get tremendously hot in here. And I put out my digital recorder in the hallway, and we went off to bed. We did not get any sleep. Between footsteps, doors shutting, being touched, having our feet poked, the fan actually just turned off on its own. The next day, when I was reviewing the EVPs, there was only one. Within the first 5 minutes, there was a woman's voice that said, "Wake them up."
Wow. Oh my God. And Marion. So Marion, let's talk about, so you and Mimi are here mostly during, she's working with you on the restoration, correct? And then Marion was involved too as the manager, kind of the PR.
Yeah, she's the manager of the whole.
So what are some of, let's explain, who are the people that you mentioned, Edwin and, I'm sorry, I can edit
Lillian?
this. Yeah. Can you just, our audience may not have heard of the prior episode. Can you just mention the prior owners and let's talk about how you first met this house before you even started working on it and the prior owners.
So 2013, my sisters were hooked up with a paranormal group, actually Joni Mahan. And I think probably a lot of your listeners may know her. She's an incredible author. Yeah. Wrote multiple books and one about the mansion. It was her paranormal group that was open to the public. So my sisters signed up and they said, "Hey, why don't you come with us?" And we said, "Yeah, why not?" And that was our first experience. And it did not disappoint that night.
Really?
And then we developed a friendship with those owners, Edwin and Lillian. We developed a friendship, which we still have today. I just spoke to Edwin this week. So, and then it just developed into where it is today,
So Joni Mahan's book is about Edwin and Lillian, right?
Yeah, Bones in the Basement. It's a little bit about them and the paranormal that surrounds the home, yeah. It's a very good book.
Do they, after, your experiences here, because they were kind of driven out of the house, or they were kind of frightened out of the house, maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, there was an event which kind of catapulted them leaving.
There were a couple things why they ended up not living in the house anymore. Yeah. The main reason wasn't so much the spirits, although it did make them nervous, but initially it was incredibly hot in the summertime, and in the wintertime they lived out of 2 rooms because you couldn't heat it. Yeah. And they had 2 pellet stoves, and one was in the kitchen and one was in the office, and those are the 2 places they pretty much lived. Yeah. So, and it was just not cost effective to keep the furnace. It literally would run 24 hours a day.
Yeah. How long did they live here for?
About a year. They actually lived full-time in the house about, I think it's a year and a half, I think it was.
Okay.
But they owned the home from 2008 till 2015.
Okay. Have any spirits ever followed you home, you and Mimi home, when you didn't sleep here and you drove back to Beverly? Any time you had to say?
I've had car passengers that I haven't been able to see.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Not the whole ride home, but
did you clear it? Did you basically acknowledge them and clear them out? Yeah. Okay.
Well, no, they just left. I said, you can come home with, you can go for the ride. I said, eventually you're gonna have to go back, though. Yeah. I mean, and they do. Yeah. They do. But.
Wow. In doing this book and unearthing the research, give me one or two trivia points of interest that people would be surprised to know and that maybe even surprised you.
This is really interesting with Edward Pierce. And I didn't realize it until I looked at his birth, when he was born, and then I looked at when he died, and I go, oh my goodness. He was born on a Tuesday, on September 19th in 1882. 85 years later, in 1967, when he passed away, it was on a Tuesday. It was September 19th, his birthday.
Wow.
So,
talk about having your life mapped out for you.
Yeah, and that was just incredibly interesting, I thought. The other thing that I didn't expect was SK Pierce actually owned 2 chair factories. He owned a factory for 2 years before he bought the one that was across the street.
Really?
And he was 23 years old when he bought his first chair factory. And as I said, 2 years later, he sold that, and he bought the one that everyone knows in 1845, and he was 25 years old and he had 8 employees when he initially started.
Wow. Kind of depressing how people had their act together back then. Let's give a shout out to Mimi. Again, she's like you guys are just meant for each other. I mean, you finish each other's sentences, just most perfect couple I ever met. She's been with you through this whole journey. She's a little shy sometimes. We had to force her on our last interview. Let's talk about maybe her and anybody else that's helped you with restoring the mansion and even kind of the book and your experiences the past couple of years. Just a quick,
Yeah, Mimi's been great. She supported me through this endeavor with the book. I mean, it has taken a lot of my time. She's been there supporting me. She's actually gone out and done some legwork for me, even to different communities, driven down to Quincy to get a document or wherever it takes her. And she's been just marvelous in the house here as far as, my help in doing things.
Yeah, she's
instrumental in it.
Yeah, you guys I was fortunate to have you both in my documentary, Afraid of Nothing. You guys have actually recreated some dramatic recreations on the Travel Channel and a couple of shows. You want to talk about some of the TV shows that have been here?
Yeah, we've been fortunate with Marion Luoma too. We've been fortunate to be interviewed by Chronicle. We were on the show Most Terrifying Places in America. We were filmed. We also did a weekend for some contestant winners with Netflix and LG TV. Most recently, I was just contacted by the Travel Channel to provide them with some information. I can only disclose that much, but and we'll see where it goes from there.
You mentioned you live in Beverly. How long a commute was that? An hour?
About an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay.
Until you hit 128, and then you add another hour.
People in Massachusetts know what that means all too well. Is your home in Beverly? Are there any haunts there? Or?
Mm-hmm. We purchased the house that Mimi grew up in, and when she was a child there's always been a male spirit in the basement. Yeah. And we know him as one of the previous owners. No problems. You see a shadow, or you hear him walking up usually he's in the cellar, you hear him walk up the stairs, or the cats always want to go down there. And then Mimi's mom comes and visits, and she clangs and bangs because of a disease she had before she passed away. She lost all her fingers and her toes, and now she makes noise because she can, I guess. And then her father comes usually once in a while, usually in the winter, and turns on a music box that's broken, plays that.
By the way, a couple times while editing this video, I've heard a couple weird kind of background sounds. And here's one I just caught after Ken just spoke there. And you'll hear it says, here. There's a couple others that I heard. I just didn't put them in. But Ken had mentioned there was a spirit in the room as soon as we started the interview. So food for thought.
And then we recently, over the last year and a half, brought home 3 haunted items.
Did you?
One is a haunted mirror, one is a haunted doll, and one is a chair.
Where did you get those? Was it from here or other places?
One was from a friend that didn't want anything to do with it anymore. And one was, actually 2 are from a friend. Another one was from a close friend of Mimi's, Laurie Cabot.
Okay. Which we should say is the Salem witch, right?
Yes.
The most iconic witch in Salem, but probably in the world as well.
Yes.
Hope to have her on the show real soon. That's great, yeah.
The other one was a chair. We were actually helping a family do a cleansing, and they said, ever since we got this chair, things have been happening and so forth, and we experienced some things with the chair that I wanted out. We go, we'll take it. And the husband picked it up before we even finished the sentence and was carrying it out to our car. So we do have that. Did experience a really cool thing with the mirror. Because the mirror is interesting because Mimi's friend, when she was a child, she had it hang in her room, and she was walking by it one day, and a man's face came out of the mirror and went back in the mirror.
Oh,
almost like a 3D
That's
image.
like a CG effect that you should see on all these horror movies, right? It's like,
Yep. So she was glad to get rid of it. The only thing that's happened with the mirror with us is we were just looking at it, and you thought it was water. It lost the mirror.
Wow. It's
the
not in the bedroom,
material
right? Because I hear you're not supposed to put a mirror in your bedroom. Is it in the bedroom, or what room do you have
No,
it?
it's not in the bed. It's
Okay.
No, it's in another room.
You're going to have your own little haunted museum pretty soon.
So
Yeah, I gave you guys an Ouija board, which unfortunately didn't have any activity with. But I will tell you that a Ouija board that I gave to you, it came from the Talking Board Historical Society. Mm-hmm. Someone thought it had 7 demons in it. It was given to Rob Fitz, who owns the Magic Parlor. One day out of the blue, some medium walked in and said, because it was in a case with a bunch of other stuff, that right there, that has 7 demons. So Rob didn't know what to make of it. He said, look, you want to buy it? So I did. And he actually charged me $75 versus the $50, which he usually charges, which is great. I'm kidding. But he did. But actually, I bought it, and I brought Brad Little Frog Hudson, who was here. You met Brad, and he cleansed it. And my wife, my ex-wife now, but my wife at the time would not let me bring it into the house, so I drove around for months with it in my trunk of my car, and I started getting these really weird EVPs, which you may or may not remember from.
I remember you talking about
that. And then I said, I got to get rid of this. I can't bring it in the house. Can't keep my car. I want to shut off these EVPs that I'm getting that are coming through the AM radio. And you guys took it. And fortunately, you guys have had no experiences with it, which is good.
we put it in with the 3 other Ouija boards we have.
Yeah. What do you think of Ouija boards? Do you like
They're
them?
perfectly safe if you know how to use them.
Okay.
The problem is you have to go through. It's not really a ritual, but you have to know how to protect yourself, cleanse areas, and do it for the right reasons. It's not a game.
Yeah.
As with Mimi and I do table tipping, and we've had some incredible experiences in the mansion with the previous owners too, with validation of communicating. So it's a physical means of mediumship.
Now, that's a great story. You've told it before. I know we have just a few minutes left, but can you tell that table tipping story?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, table tipping is a form of physical mediumship where, as it says, the table tips. Usually has 3 legs, solid table. You don't want a flimsy table. And what happens is you communicate and direct them to tilt the table and tap the leg back down on the floor to indicate either a number or a letter. And when they reach the letter or the number they want you to know, the table will stop doing it, tapping. So multiple times we did it in the mansion. We were with Edwin and Lillian, and Marion was here, and Mimi and I. And we had been doing it for a while. Like I said, we talked with all the spirits. Got to a point where we knew who was on the table just from the way they moved the table before even asking who it was. The one spirit that would never get on until this particular time was Ellen, the second wife. And she got on, and she tilted the table to the floor, gently. We didn't even bring it to the floor. It defied gravity. It should have just dropped when it got on its side. It didn't. It went gently to the floor, and then dashed across the floor. And this was happening on the second floor in the hall, and started banging against the safe, which was her safe.
Which is this big, gotta be about a ton. It's this huge cast iron, 3-4 foot. I mean, it's one of those safes that's so big, no one for generations will move it from wherever the first person left it.
It will stay there. Oh, I should back up. Before she did this, tilting the table over, she did spell out the letter S and the letter T. Letter O. So she's banging the safe. We stopped the table tipping because I don't want a broken table, first of all. And we're looking all over the safe. Lillian's looking inside. People are looking all over. I'm underneath it looking. And then...
All right, one more example. And this could be stretching it, but it does sound a little bit like Ken, if you listen closely. Who knows? But I'll tell you, doing this interview after Ken talked, a lot of times there was this kind of trailer at the end of when he spoke, and there was these little hissing or whatever things. So, whatever. Back to the interview.
2 child's dice were found on top of the baseboard behind the safe that they're covered in cobwebs. Lillian and Edwin didn't even know they were there. And they had the letter S and the letter O. And directly below that, when I was looking under the safe, I saw something a little bit shiny. It was between the baseboard and the floor, and I took my finger and was playing with it, and I got it out. It was a skeleton key.
Wow.
We got back on the table, and for whatever reason, Ellen decided to continue speaking with us, and we asked her what room that went to, and she said room number 9. Now, remember I said there were 58 doors in this house.
Yeah.
And they all used skeleton keys.
Yeah.
And they all had their own keys. We went up, and number 9 is the billiards room on the 3rd floor.
Yep.
It fit it perfectly.
Wow.
Did not fit any other door, because we tried, in the entire house, except for that one. How do you explain that validation to communicating intelligently with a spirit that's in the house?
Yeah. No, that's just several degrees of, first for the finding the dice, then what's on the dice, then going to the, and the table moving itself like that is crazy. Yep. So, of all the skeleton keys, how many do you have in the original? Do you know? Did you have to refit most?
There's only 1 left.
Really? Okay.
And I haven't found any during the restoration. I never found any. So there was that 1 key.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great one. All right. So let's going to wrap up with a couple quick questions. Looking back, you've restored the home, you've written a book. What has surprised you most about SK Pierce and the family? It doesn't have to be paranormal, but just about them after writing the book.
I think more than what's impressed me is what I'd like to still discover. You wish you could go back in time and just see exactly what type of person and what they live day to day. Those are the things that interest me.
Yeah.
Just to see what their daily life was. I mean, it would be a struggle for us today. We have so many conveniences. You just think of what they didn't have.
Yeah, I mean, so there's nothing that says he was an ogre to work for, a mean guy, or
actually, just reading between the lines of what I found in research, it's probably complete opposite.
Huh. And what's your impression, because you've accounted the spirit here about him, is it just, when you have any encounters with him, what are they? Are they just kind of just acknowledgement that I'm still here, or what?
You don't really have anything that stands out with him. It's more of somebody in your space.
Yeah. Like
they're leaning on you, like, what are you doing here? Checking you out. Yeah. Or you may, for some reason, when you get that feeling, sometimes you get an aroma of a cigar or a pipe, so it makes you wonder. I mean, although I couldn't find anything in documentation that he did that, but it wasn't uncommon back then.
Sure.
Possibly. Huh. And a lot of psychic mediums will walk in the side entrance, and if the double doors to the hallway are open, showing the grand staircase, they'll immediately see him standing on the stairway, and sometimes holding his hand out like, "Stop! You're not coming in here."
Wow!
I didn't invite you.
Yeah. I think there's another book in you. I am so impressed you wrote a book. That's one thing. I've made movies. I've done comic books and graphic novels. Writing a book is so much work, so much research, and on top of everything, Ken's like shaking his head. Yes, you can't see it, and his eyes are rolling. It's like a ton of work beyond everything else he has. And he's an EMT, by the way. So it's not like you don't have a cushion chair job where you deal with a lot of trauma outside of work. So yeah, it's kudos to you. I just feel there should be, after this one, which I'm going to encourage everybody to buy, and we're going to share where they can get that shortly. You're already back ordered. You did an initial purchase, yep. And you're already back ordered. And I think once you get these in, they're going to be back ordered again too. I think there's another follow-up book at some point would be great about the SK Pierce, maybe on the haunted side if you want to. But where can we get this book? Where can we buy your book?
So currently, you won't find it on Amazon because I went through a private publisher. Best opportunity to purchase it, if you're going to look online, is to go on Rob Conti's site for the house, the official site, the SK Pierce Haunted Victorian Mansion. There's a link right on there that you can hit, and it'll bring you directly to PayPal, and you can pay through there, and I will ship it to you. Or you can contact me directly through an email at kennoir73@yahoo.com. Or next week, you can come and have a copy signed, because I'm having a book signing directly across the street from the mansion at the Gardner, South Gardner Hotel on Saturday and Sunday, the 10th and the 11th, from noontime till 3.
Okay, October 10th and 11th in Gardner. Try to get this podcast out before then. Yeah, I will put in the show notes. So I encourage everybody, after listening to this, go to the show notes. I'll have your email. I'll have the website that you just talked about and how to get the book. I really encourage them. You're not going to get a better, more deeper insight into what's it like to a building like this than you, other than SK Pierce, I guess, who's not here. So I encourage everybody, if you really want the inside track of a really a great, venerable, historic building that also has a great historic side and is very famous, get it, do it. I definitely recommend it. It's going to be great. I bought it, and if they get it from you, they can get it autographed, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. All right. Cool. And my last question, what's next for you? I mean, you've done a lot in your life, but you've done a lot in the past 4 or 5 years. Do you take it easy, or are you going to do something else?
Well, I'm going to continue to be here, at least, Rob and Allison, current owners, still be doing the tours and overseeing what events may take place here in the future, and probably doing more historical research. That's in my blood. But my next project is actually putting a photo book together for Rob and Allison of the restoration, so they have some books that they can remember the place.
Coffee table book. Yeah, you guys have some amazing photos. I know Mimi posted a lot on Facebook.
I know. I have about 3,000 photos I have to go through.
It's amazing. Just throw it all in a big book. It's great. Well, Ken, thank you so much again. You're now an alumni. You've been on 2 shows, which is great. Only a few people have done that so far. And again, we ask people to check the show notes, buy the book, support a great guy in a really wonderful building. Thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I enjoyed it.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode, and the world will know how swell you are.